private YouTube account. I'm pretty sure that that wouldn't have worked. So there we go. It's the official Sellics account. That's a lot better.
There we go.
I'm pretty sure that my one YouTube follower is not too interested in whatever I have to say here privately. So
your mom.
Yes.
At least my mom. That's who's following me on YouTube.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. So YouTube is up and running. That's great. So guys, welcome to episode 5 of Sellics Thursday Live. Sellics Thursday Live is a weekly show that we do every Thursday in which we invite Amazon industry experts to discuss strategies and tactics on how to successfully sell on Amazon. Today, the big topic is adjusting to the new normal, what brands can do during uncertain times. So those of you who have followed the first 4 episodes, we actually started this format because we wanted to help our customers and brands to navigate this Corona crisis. So the first 4 episodes have been very much on the crisis itself. And so today we want to focus a bit more on what's coming next, because from our point of view, the immediate crisis is kind of over, at least when it comes to Amazon. Amazon has made great improvements on the operational side, right? And so we want to take a look forward and understand, well, what's coming next and how should brands position themselves in this kind of new normal where there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. But things are already a lot more certain than they used to be, just a week or even 2 weeks ago, right? So that's a big topic for today. My guest here, I'm very excited to have Peter Kearns. So Peter is an Amazon brand expert who previously actually worked at Amazon Seller Services for, I think, 4 or 5 years, right? So you spend a lot of time within the juggernaut. There, obviously, he helped many brands to generate a lot of revenue. I've heard numbers like 500 million in sales, so that's quite impressive. And then he went on to consult brands and businesses to grow the Amazon strategy. And today he is the VP of business development for 180 Commerce, which is a brand strategy and management agency specializing in helping brands succeed on Amazon. So Peter, great to have you on the show. Do you want to introduce yourself very briefly?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Franz. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's great. So my name is Peter Kearns, and you're right. I was with Amazon for about 4 years, ran the consumables team for Seller Central. So bringing on new brands and retailers to fill gaps in selection. A lot of fun. Did that for about 4 years and then started my own consulting. And then I've been with 180 Commerce for almost 3 years now. 180, we're a complete, brand solution for brand selling on the marketplace. So we manage brands. They're complete Amazon Seller Central accounts. So everything from inventory, customer service, optimizing listings, advertising, of course, is a big key. And so we've been around for about 3 years. We're kind of a boutique agency. We've got a smaller number of brands because we really like to partner with them and get in deep with them to have that proverbial seat at their board meeting, if you will. And that's about it. We're excited to be here. Thanks.
And so you work primarily with sellers, right? So do you not work with vendors at all, or do you also have a few vendor customers?
Yeah, great question. We do work with vendors. So we primarily work with sellers on the Seller Central side, but we absolutely work with vendors on the Vendor Central side as well. Okay. Doing content optimization for them or purchase order management, or sometimes it's a migration strategy of moving from Vendor Central to Seller Central. Yeah. So we definitely work in all capacities. Okay,
cool. Awesome. Well, Peter, I'm excited to talk to you about the things today, right? Peter put a lot of effort into preparing a lot of stuff. So that's going to be exciting. Some housekeeping before we get started. So first of all, there will be a recording of this. So if you need to drop out, or if you want to watch our previous episodes, you can find them on the Sellics YouTube channel. And second thing is, if you guys have any questions in the meantime during the interview, feel free to just post them. You can either post them on the chat, you can post them on YouTube, or you can also post them in the Q&A section here in Zoom. And then we'll make sure to take some time in between and probably also at the end to answer all the questions. So post your questions and we'll answer them as we get to it. All right, awesome. To get started, let me just share my screen very briefly to give everyone a summary of what happened so far. First of all, when it comes to the timeline, right? The way that we look at it in Sellics is essentially that there were 4 major phases by now. Phase 1 was essentially from late January until late February, essentially, which was primarily when this entire COVID and Corona situation was primarily affecting China and the supply side of things, right? That was phase one before it came to the Western world. Phase two then was all the nationwide lockdowns that happened sometime around mid-March. And this is true for Europe. This is also true for the US to a certain degree, right? So all the nations shutting down. Phase three shortly after, so this was around the 20th of March, where Amazon then started to restrict inbound shipments, didn't issue any POs anymore, and also the outbound shipments to customers have been delayed by 4 or 5 weeks or so. So shipping times went up quite drastically. So phase three, I think, was probably the one that affected the sellers on Amazon the most. And so the good news is now that from our point of view, we're entering phase four now, where at least Amazon and the Amazon operations, specifically FBA, has resumed for many categories, right? Where it's not yet on the exact same level where it used to be before, but at least it is getting better, and most sellers can send products in already, maybe in reduced quantities, but at least they can send products in. And so I think that this is the beginning of what we consider the new normal, right? Where there's still a lot of economic uncertainty, but this uncertainty is primarily outside of Amazon, and where, at least from Amazon's point of view, there is a lot of things are going in the right direction, right? Yeah. So this is I think what we've seen so far when it comes to the timeline and where we stand today, right? So today we want to focus, obviously we want to review a little bit as well, but we want to talk about phase four specifically. And then also an update that I wanted to share with everyone is when it comes to the sales and sales developments that we've seen, we can see that obviously when the restrictions started, there was a big dip in sales. Then there was a huge increase right after, when everyone was in lockdown and people were, hoarding and panic buying and buying all the things that they needed for their quarantine, essentially. And then in the week of Easter, which was 2 weeks ago, there was a pretty significant drop across all the marketplaces that we see. And so last week there was an uptick again in most places, except for the US, actually. But the other marketplaces saw a slight uptick, so that on average, we're currently about 20% below the January, February sales level. This is when we look at it from an aggregated level across the entire market. Obviously, some categories are way up and other categories are way down, right? So that's essentially what we see. And so I think it's always important to see kind of how is the market developing. So much from my side. Peter, from your side, right? Obviously, a lot has happened over the past 6 to 8 weeks. With FBA now starting to open back up this week, what are you seeing?
Yeah, definitely still a lot of uncertainty. And I think that will continue for a while, because, it seemed like there for a while, there were just like these constant little, shoes dropping, if you will, where there were just, I think it was on the 17th, they shut down FBA, and then Amazon started to do additional things. My understanding is that the FBA is starting to open up again. A lot of the new hires that you referenced there, those were backfilling. Some were for additional hires, of course, but a lot of that was also for backfilling for people who were sick or who weren't comfortable coming to work in the NFC, or they couldn't come to work because of their families. They need, kids are home from school. So a lot of those new employees are coming online, getting up trained. So I think that's why we're starting to see that FBA ramp up again. But there's still things that are happening. There's still a lot of questions. It's nice to see this returning, but they're doing things that make planning and preparing for key sales events that are coming up really challenging. So while FBA is reopening, customer orders are the shipping delays are getting scaled back. We're starting to see things get shipped out sooner than a month, which was bad. We are encouraged by it, but we're still also we definitely don't feel like we've turned the corner. Okay.
And so those famous 100,000 and then another 75,000 employees, right? Obviously, that's a lot of people. Those were primarily for backfilling, you say?
So from what my understanding, some people that I've talked to about it that know details about the situation, some were planned. Because Amazon's continuing to expand their FCs and the capabilities there. So some were definitely planned. Some were designed though, or were put in place to backfill for decreases in staffing at the fulfillment centers.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a huge number, right? 175,000 employees. And so it seems that they made good progress in hiring those people rather quickly. And so that's probably the main reasons why things are starting to open up again. Now, when we look at the inventory side of the business, right, which is obviously has been a crucial part of the past weeks, but also will continue. How have those inventory strategies changed over the past few weeks? And what does it go forward strategy? How could it look like?
Yeah, strategies around inventory have been impacted significantly. And I think they'll continue to be based on a number of factors. One, it will obviously what Amazon does for merchandising and other kinds of things that are happening on the site. Two, customer behaviors in shopping. So, the big thing that we've been seeing is a lot of decrease in the ability for FBA. And so what that creates is uncertainty around inventory levels there. If you can't inbound inventory, or if there's been, a deprioritization for products that are non-essential to be shipped out, then you're seeing a slowdown in your sales. So, what do you do with that? And there's questions around that because, do you want to pull the inventory out if you have your own direct-to-consumer website, or you have other channels that you can fulfill that inventory through? Do you want to pull it out from Amazon and risk like, oh, now they've opened it back up and now you want to try to put it back into Amazon? So it is a bit of a challenge, and there is definitely, some analysis that needs to go into it. For essential items, I think that you're pretty safe there. I think that those items that people need to live every day, grocery, health and personal care, personal protective equipment, those sorts of things, toys and games to keep kids busy, they may not be deemed essential, but in my house they are. Those are the sorts of things where you can feel a little bit more confident about your inventory strategy and planning because the demand for them will probably be the same or continue to increase. You can at least map out your weeks of coverage on that. But I do think it's important to recognize that as additional channels come online, or as restrictions open up and people may feel more confident shopping in brick and mortar, or going, face to face to box stores, that some of those things might be impacted as well. So, I think that it's a challenge, and it's going to continue to be a challenge, especially with Amazon kind of being overwhelmed and having to deprioritize some really key sales tactics that they've been using on their site for years.
So, okay. So if I understand you correctly, then essentially you're saying the essential categories, they will just continue to be rather safe and stable. Maybe we'll see an uptick. Have you experienced any issues with essential deliveries, where either inbound or outbound?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it in both FBA inbound, things getting checked in, delays there. We're also seeing it in the individual orders getting to the customers. So we're seeing, increases in damaged products. We're seeing increases in, the wrong items being shipped, things like that. So, there's definitely a learning curve with all of this. And I think that it's going to continue to be that way. And I think that that's going to be one of the challenges, is that you don't really know how to prepare for those sorts of things. So you've got to be monitoring your business really closely.
Okay. And when you say monitoring the business very closely, do you have any specific metrics that you're looking at?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first and foremost, we pay really close attention to the buyer-seller messaging. I mean, everybody does, but I mean, we're trying to get out in front of it. And so we're trying to map, if we're seeing patterns in behavior around negative customer experiences, packaging, those sorts of things, that we want to try to get out there to mitigate that. I mean, there are things that Amazon has been lenient on, and so that's nice. But at the same time, the customers aren't, right? Customers are under a lot of stress, and I apologize if you guys can hear my daughter shrieking in the background. Speaking of stress, I don't be surprised if she comes in here. But customers are under a lot of stress, and so sometimes they buy these things online. Amazon has grown over the years to become one of the most trusted brands in America, and so consumers still think that, and they buy something, they don't get what they expect, and they're under pressure at home, and so it's one of those things to remember, the challenges with all that, got to be sensitive and, maybe over deliver when it comes to responding to those negative customer experiences.
Okay, cool. And so when it comes to non-essential items, obviously now things have been, when was it? It's been almost a week right now that things have started to open up again, right? Maybe even a bit more. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah.
What's been your experience so far? I mean, is everything smooth, or a lot of hiccups in the process? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, non-essential items, yes, they're starting to pick back up. You're able to inbound shipments. There's limitations on inventory, which is somewhat of a challenge, especially if you're seeing, products that have seen an increase in velocity. You're selling more units because people are shopping online.
Right.
So there's definitely those challenges there. We're still seeing delays on some items that are getting shipped to consumers. So while FBA is open, you may go try to purchase the item, but it's still going to be a few weeks before you can get it. So in those cases, it's a challenge. I mean, I think that's going to be the theme for this whole discussion, is that this is a big challenge. And so for FBA, for non-essential, you've really got to be mindful to the fact that, yes, you can impact or inbound things, but you may not be seeing the same unit velocity that you did beforehand. So you want to be monitoring those weeks of coverage and making those necessary changes. The other thing that you might be looking at is you typically maybe do LTL shipments. What we've been doing is preparing small parcel shipments so that we can get them out the door faster and get them into the FCs quicker. You don't have to wait for scheduling pickups and scheduling deliveries. They're just going to arrive. So those are some things that you may want to be looking at your current situation or strategies that you do for FBA replenishment, and make adjustments to those based on the circumstances. Maybe send in smaller quantities via the small parcel.
Yeah, that is a great tip for everyone, right? Because there is obviously a certain desire, I guess, from everyone that once things open up again, you just want to send in as much as possible, right? The drawback of this, obviously, is that it might take longer, and it might break, right? So it could be a strategy as well to just break it down to smaller ones and start sending in smaller things faster, and then maybe after you have 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller deliveries, that you then send in a bigger chunk, right? Hoping that by then also the processes on Amazon sites will be more stable.
Yeah, I would be very hesitant to return to previous, inventory fulfillment strategies and numbers. I would be scaling it back because there's a number of things that are going to happen. I mean, they're lifting restrictions, so clearly consumer shopping is going to kind of change a little bit. But we don't know what those lifted restrictions will do, and will there be more spikes? And so, the last thing that I would want is to have a significant amount of inventory on hand in FBA if something changes and Amazon deprioritizes again, which is very likely. Right. Health officials are saying that like those second waves that are coming could be bigger than the first. I'm not a health expert. I don't know, but I think that that's something to be prepared for, is that as these situations change and the dynamics of them change, I would want to be, and we're coaching our brands to be in a position to be able to be nimble and to be able to pivot and be flexible. And so if you are, all of a sudden returning to, pre-COVID FBA inventory numbers, and you're seeing a serious increase in demand, and you're trying to shove everything into FBA as fast as you can before they turn it off, what happens then if, they do turn it off again, they do prioritize, and now you have all this inventory sitting in FBA and it's not going anywhere. So I would be trying to figure out, okay, what's the leanest amount of inventory I can run in FBA without running out of stock, without feeling like if they, do make some changes or close it, that I'm going to be negatively impacted. But I would also be looking at what are things that I can be doing off of FBA, not being reliant upon FBA. And one of those is FBM.
Okay, so is that obviously now looking forward? Is this a strategy? Obviously, you're very outspoken, and I think it makes a lot of sense on being nimble and flexible and adapting. Because if there's a lot of uncertainty, then obviously this is flexibility is key. So what are strategies going forward? Right, staying flexible, obviously sending in smaller packages. What are other things? SFP, FBM. I mean, there've been a lot of hype around this.
Yeah. So, seller fulfilled prime is something that's great. It's still on hold there's a wait list for it. You can still sign up for the wait list. I would do that immediately. I imagine there's a significant number of people who are sellers who are signing up for SFP. I know that Amazon has been working with sellers that are already enrolled in SFP, and they're moving FBA orders, and they're asking the seller to fulfill through SFP instead of their FBA. So clearly Amazon's trying to figure out creative ways to meet the customer demand. And so brands and resellers should be doing the same thing. And the next best thing is merchant fulfilled. And I think, one of the things that's really interesting is in my time with Amazon, in the early stages, merchant fulfilled was something that we embraced, and then we doubled down on FBA, and then it was just all FBA or nothing. And now it's really about like, okay, in this situation, merchant fulfilled. Consumers are more interested in getting the product as opposed to the way they're getting the product. So beforehand, Prime was everything. If your product wasn't Prime badged, then it probably wasn't going to get surfaced, and it probably wasn't going to see the same kind of sales velocity that you would expect. And so with what we're seeing now is merchant fulfilled is a very viable option because of a number of things. One, you can get it faster than if Amazon has deprioritized it and you have to wait a month. And the other aspect of it from a seller or brand's perspective, you're controlling the inventory. And if you have the inventory in your hand, you're going to have more opportunities to pivot and add and adapt your strategies, which are some things that we're seeing here, which is kind of cool. And so that's something that I think if you have the capabilities to do merchant fulfilled, I would. If you have the abilities, the resources to start your own direct to consumer, if you're an Amazon only brand and you don't have your own direct to consumer website, you absolutely need to light Shopify right now. I mean, get something like that going. So those are two things that we're definitely seeing.
Okay, so essentially trying to keep as much inventory as possible under your control, and the moment essentially goes to FBA, it's outside of your control, and so no one knows what's happening. You cannot control what's happening to it, right? And so FBM and SFP essentially allow you to do this. I mean, is obviously the key question is if I don't do FBM these days, right? How quickly it doesn't make sense for me to start now. Now that FBA is starting again, maybe it's just a wrong investment, it's distracting me, and in 4 weeks I won't need it anymore. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I don't think that this is a short-lived scenario, unfortunately. Okay. I think that there's a couple of things. The challenges with Amazon are going to continue, and Amazon's kind of giving some hints to that. They have canceled their Mother's Day promotions. They've canceled their Father's Day promotions. They have delayed Prime Day indefinitely. So, I mean, like, those are really big things. And if you look at where we're at in the calendar year, we're about to kind of, we're coming out of, we're the start of Q2, and we're coming up to that kind of like really acceleration phase of the year, getting us ready for Q4. So typically when we're looking at a brand and looking at sales calendars for the year, Q2 is when we start to kind of ramp things up, because you have Mother's Day, you have Father's Day, you have dads and grads, you have this kind of increase, Easter being the start of that, you have this increase in sales. And then that pivots right into July, which is typically Prime Day. So you have this amazing opportunity to have Christmas in July, which is, really what actually, because when I was at Amazon and we did launch Prime Day, that was basically like, how do we inject sales in the quietest month of the year, and let's do Christmas in July. And then that would, ignite or accelerate sales to start for back to school. Mm-hmm. So back to school, just, it dovetails right into Q4. And so the thing that's happening with this that we don't know is Amazon's giving hints that they're going to be challenged with this by canceling these key sales events, delaying key sales events. They've removed the deals page from their website. They've deprioritized, sales widgets, merchandising widgets like the, frequently bought together. So they're doing things to shift consumer behavior. Not because the consumer behavior is changing, but because Amazon can't keep up with demand. And so what I would be looking at is, okay, Amazon has been such a dominant channel for sales. that it does appear somewhat vulnerable, and as a brand and a reseller, now's the time to recognize that there are opportunities to expand that. And so I don't think that launching FBM or a direct to consumer website, based on what's happening now, based on the the unemployment numbers that we're seeing, I think that and the people who aren't comfortable going out, the slow ramp for businesses to open, retail, brick and mortar, that's going to take a long time to recover. I really think that adding those additional channels are going to be important to or strategies are going to be really important to brands and resellers going forward. I don't think it's just a Band-Aid. I think it is a strategic move that should be done.
It's a strategic move that is where the urgency is just increased to a certain degree because of the situation, right? And I think, I mean, I guess the important thing is also, this is not just helpful now in the current situation. This having your own store will also be helpful 2 years down the road, right?
Right.
And so it's not just for the current situation. So going FBM, and once you go FBM, essentially you have everything in place to also start your own store, more or less, right? At least from a logistical point of view. So that definitely makes sense. Okay, that's certainly very helpful. And any other tips or tactics specifically when it comes to inventory that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, daily checks. Now it's time to get hyper vigilant on making sure that you're, hitting those metrics. Yes, Amazon has been kind, and they've said that they're not going to suspend sellers for violating, their metrics. The order defect rate, late deliveries, those sorts of things. But really, I mean, eventually it's going to come back. And so don't rest on your laurels there. Like, get a process in place that monitors those metrics to make sure that you are, checking your FBA numbers to see if you can inbound new shipments. That's changing, daily, sometimes more than once during the day. Check your metrics, make sure you're hitting those demands. If you are having to bring people on to do support FBM and they're new, take time to train them, get them up to speed. We have one of our brand partners that struggled. They've seen a really big demand with their products, and so they've having to start sending in more units. They're doing FBM, and so they had to bring on extra help. And what they recognized, that some of the people weren't fully trained, some of the products were getting put into the boxes, they were have glass, and that they were ending up getting broken along the shipment. So really monitoring that information. The other thing to keep an eye on is there's probably going to be a higher rate of returns, as people kind of did some binge buying and I don't know, hoarding, if you will. But keep an eye on that. It's definitely going to be something that you might want to prepare for. I haven't seen if Amazon said anything about that. So, in terms of, people who are buying a lot of products, especially personal care products. So, that's something I would just keep on the radar. And I think that's kind of where I think that's it on the inventory side.
Yeah. Okay.
We talked about a lot.
Yeah. We definitely talked about a lot of points, right? So there's also a question that I wanted to answer right here already, which is that if the strategy is to focus more on FBM, what's your best strategy to ensure you're still getting the buy box, since FBA gets you the button more?
Yeah.
Especially for new listings.
Right. Well, it depends. I mean, if you are the brand or a reseller, so that will determine a lot of it. If you're a reseller, it's going to be challenging. I would think that Amazon, as they've made these changes, they would start to prioritize buy box based on, or at least I'm hoping, if anyone from Amazon's listening, I hope you guys are considering adjusting the buy box parameters to recognize that FBM might be a better experience than FBA. If you're delaying something for a month, then somebody can FBM and faster. If you're a reseller, that's going to be a challenge because of the fact that you are probably competing with multiple sellers, and some of them might still have the item in FBA, and that's going to be a challenge. So just monitor your buy box your percentage on those to keep an eye on it. You can have both an FBM and an FBA offer with different SKUs. Technically, I don't think you're supposed to, but people do it all the time. So that is one option that you might try to look at, is if you do have inventory right now, you might try to have the FBM offer on it as well. You can set it up with separate SKUs. So that's one thing to consider, but so a reseller, it's a different scenario. If you're the brand, it shouldn't really matter, because if you are in FBA and you're converting over to FBM and you're the only seller on it, then you should be fine.
Yeah, I agree. So if you're the only one and you don't care too much whether you sell FBA or FBM, then it doesn't make a difference. Right. If you're the brand and you care about, well, essentially it's just a matter of pricing. So you can play around with the pricing and see at what price difference Amazon is flipping it around.
But be careful with that, though, because they've definitely increased their monitoring of pricing to prevent for price gouging, and so we are seeing ASINs get suspended for price gouging. A lot of false positives also in that space, and so they'll either remove the buy box or suspend the ASIN there. So that's something that you want to pay close attention to as well.
So if you play around with the price, rather downwards, not upwards, right? If you want to play it safe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Peter, thanks. That was very helpful. Moving on to the advertising side, right? How have the recent events impacted advertising strategies? Obviously, advertising was a big area, still is a big area for Amazon, right? What happened on the advertising side?
No, it's a huge area for Amazon. It will continue to be for quite a while. There's so many good things happening in the advertising space. I think that there's this like FBA and inventory management, it just creates a lot of questions. A lot of brands and resellers, you had your strategy, everything was going well, and now you're like, what do I do? And so, with the changes and all this, it definitely means that there's different changes in traffic. So what we're seeing is there are definitely new customers coming to Amazon. So, today's earnings report, I hope, fingers crossed, that they might give some insight into, how Prime membership has been impacted. Some of the reports and things that I've read, not just specific to Amazon, but there are so many people who are converting to e-commerce now than they ever have before. So, and a lot of that is going to Amazon. So you've got a lot of these holdouts. So you've got a whole new group of people coming to Amazon. You've got a big increase in traffic, or you've got existing customers who are now on Amazon shopping, 3, 4, 5 times as much as they did beforehand. So, the changes in traffic means changes in strategy. Like, you can't just keep the same strategy that you had before. And I think the first thing you want to be asking yourselves are, should you be advertising or not? And so that question can really only be answered based on looking at your data, examining month-over-month data, year-over-year data, really having a good understanding of how your sales compare. And, ideally your advertising is driving positive results. So if you aren't seeing those kinds of positive results, you want to be, maybe taking a pause and considering, what's going on there and why you're not seeing positive results.
Okay, so that's definitely a very interesting point. That the audience on Amazon is changing to a certain degree. So there's probably a higher percentage of new users, new Amazon customers than there used to be in the past, right? So I think that's a very interesting point. That's definitely overlooked, right? Probably the audience might be a bit older as well, right? Because who was not on Amazon before? I don't know, right? But probably more and more older people.
Definitely.
So what does it mean in terms of strategy, right? So does it how can you adapt to this? If you're a brand.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, it depends where you fall in the essentials, non-essentials space, right? So if you are an essentials, so we have a couple of brands that we work with who are essentials. Grocery brands. One is a kids brand that again, I don't think Amazon's deemed it as essential, but their sales, I mean, it went through the roof. Right. So we saw traffic and conversion increase. So we started looking at that and monitoring the performance there. And then for non-essentials, big hit. So we reached out to those brand partners immediately, and started to pull back advertising on there. However, the one thing is that you don't want to turn it off. Because you can't turn it off completely. You just might want to be pausing campaigns that are running high costs, or if you're running testing campaigns, those are the things that you want to be paying attention to and probably making adjustments. If you are in that phase where you're like, oh man, I need to turn it off, I would recommend just trying to go to more of a brand protection strategy. So you're protecting your brand against your competitors being able to conquest against you. You may not be exposing to new customers, so you may not be reaching those new customers, which could be a disappointment. But at the same time, like if you don't have the inventory to support it, you don't have the infrastructure to support it, like you can't support the orders. You really want to be focused on that. And so, conserve the budget so for later times when you are getting back up to speed. So reaching those new customers might be, you might want to really try to do it, but you may not be able to support it. So you may want to just go to the protecting. To reach those new consumers, what we've been looking at and talking about really is focusing on keywords, because there's probably new keywords that are being used before that people haven't been searching. So 5 weeks ago, I never really understood or heard the term social distancing. Now I use it probably every single day. PPE. So really looking closely at new keywords that are being generated based on new customers coming here shopping. I think that's really going to be something that's important to it.
Yeah, I think one of the strategies that we talked about in one of the previous episodes was that if you're obviously a couple of categories and products that see a huge increase in demand, right? Either for necessity or because they're new customers on Amazon. And so if you fall into this category, right, great for you. But if you don't, then the question is, well, what do you do? How can you benefit from this nonetheless? And so I think using ASIN targeting for this, where essentially you target those high demand products that are somewhat related, right? And this relation could be either because the products are compatible to a certain degree, or also because it just targets the same target audience. It could be a strategy as well, where you just go after those high demand categories, and you try to take advantage of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a new consumer coming to Amazon might be coming here looking for hand sanitizer, or might be looking for something essential, something like that. And I think that that's a really great strategy where, you basically, since Amazon is kind of removing some of those suggested items, widgets that they had in the past, be proactive about trying to get there as well. So, if you're targeting a grocery item and your product, might go, so maybe you have some sort of entertainment product and then you sell a snack, and then you target a snack product. And so somebody might be coming there to buy the snack, but then they're like, oh, let's also get this entertainment product because we can, buy the snack food and do the game at the same time or what. So I think that is really smart as well, trying to capitalize on those sorts of opportunities that might not have been there before.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, currently advertising is, what we see is that CPCs overall are decreasing. And so conversion rate tends to be stable or even increase. So it is very, very affordable these days, relatively to what it used to in the past, to do advertising. And so if you can benefit from this, then I think it's a good opportunity. I think even now, specifically with Amazon removing all those widgets of like, the promos and those cross-selling widgets, essentially, in my mind, it also reduces the distraction and puts more emphasis on the ad space, because the ad space is still there. It's one of the few things that is still there. And so I do expect that this will continue. I do expect that CPCs will probably stay on that level or maybe even go down. But the awareness that you get for the ad, for the impression, is probably higher than what it used to be in the past. So higher click-through rate, and then also higher conversion rate.
Yeah, and that might be an opportunity also, because of that awareness, to look at off Amazon advertising opportunities to drive back to Amazon. We have one of our brand partners that's been running Instagram ads. That's just fantastic. They have the inventory to support. It's an essential product, and that's been a lot of fun to see that, because people are at home and they're on their devices a lot more, and so being creative around that advertising and taking advantage of that bigger awareness, I think, is really smart.
Yeah. So essentially, and so you can do this also without having your own shop, right? So you just you create an Instagram ad and you send them to
direct to your product listing.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, I think that's definitely something that's changed. People have more time at home and more time on the phone, even more, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Cool. Any when you think about the outlook for advertising performance or strategies, anything that comes to your mind, anything that you want to share? What do you expect?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's exciting. I mean, I'm not trying to sound insensitive to this whole situation, but for e-commerce, this has really been a pretty great thing. And again, I'm really not trying to sound insensitive, but when you go back in history, it shows like, I was reading an article last week that Alibaba in China really was relatively small. And then I believe it was the SARS epidemic that occurred that really propelled them into an e-commerce giant over there. And so I think that for e-commerce, especially in the US for grocery, this is a really exciting time. And that the Amazon aspect of it, especially around advertising, is cool because they're going to continue to roll out their programs. They've got more customers, more traffic, more advertising opportunities. And one of the things that we're excited about is we've the sponsored brand video search that came out. That is just so cool. And it's one that it really, when it's done right, a short video, it just makes you pause. Like if you're scrolling through the search on your mobile device, the video just instantly starts to play. And if it's the right video, the content is really good. It's that thumb stopping content. That's a program that we really love. We have a number of our brand partners that we're rolling that out with. Amazon just announced another beta for posts, which looks similar to, like you can take your social media, you can take your Instagram post and run ads against that on Amazon. That's one that it just came out. I haven't really been able to dig into it. But that's also exciting. I think also, going back to, with new customers, it's fun to see the new search terms. And so, you're getting things coming out that we're seeing like shelf stable, no refrigeration, immune boosters, those sorts of things. So I think from a brand perspective, getting into the brand analytics that you can see and getting in there and seeing those new search terms, I think it's exciting to see how, what you can learn about how your brand is with by consumers. So I just think it's kind of an exciting time for e-commerce. I also think it's exciting because it's not just Amazon that's going to benefit from all this e-commerce. These other e-commerce, Shopify, Walmart, Target, brick and mortar that's going to convert to e-commerce. It's pretty exciting to see that.
Do you have any specific marketplaces or channels that you would recommend? Or you go like, look, Walmart is the default number 2, eBay number 3, or Shopify, or how should I go about this as a brand?
I mean, personally, I think Walmart is absolutely, right there, and it should be high on the list, or number 1 on the list after Amazon. We had a call yesterday with, Walmart leadership on the marketplace side to hear what they're doing. It's pretty exciting over there. It's very reminiscent to my time at Amazon in 2013 and 14 in terms of like, really great growth opportunity, and let's start putting the right tools in place. So that's something that I think is really important. I think that unfortunately, as the demand on Amazon, while it's been great, it also has impacted Amazon's ability to perform. Clearly, they're having to deprioritize these key holiday events. They're having to, remove key search widgets. And it does open the door for consumers to start looking elsewhere. And so I think that I'm hearing a lot of buzz around Walmart, but I'm also hearing from my friends and family who are like, I'm sorry I didn't buy it on Amazon, and because I could get it from Walmart in 2 days instead of a month. So it is kind of, it's kind of interesting to see that. And I think that dynamic is really something that brands, resellers need to be looking at, especially as Walmart, and it's going to take me forever to not just instantly say Amazon, especially as Walmart starts to support the sellers in a way that's similar to Amazon, the Walmart fulfillment services that's going to roll out. So Walmart is first on the list. And then I think second would be my own direct to consumer. eBay is really challenging. Target's a bit clunky. No offense to Target if you guys are listening. But I think that those are the things that, Amazon, Walmart, my direct to consumer.
What about Google Shopping? Obviously, Google Shopping, they release that it's free now, essentially. They waived the fees. Obviously.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's something. I mean, they just announced that yesterday or the day before where, it's now The Google Shopping platform, it's free for any business owner, sells products online. I have the notes in here because I think that that's something like it's free, it's Google, like light it up. You know what I mean? Like, and it does include marketplaces. So Google Shopping, the company says it will now let anyone who operates a website or manages a store on a marketplace platform list without paying. So you don't have to have a direct to consumer. You can have your Amazon marketplace store be listed in Google Shopping. So I think that that's one that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I look at Google Shopping always is that Google Shopping obviously is good for generating traffic, but then typically you still need to have some sort of checkout and some sort of fulfillment behind. And so historically it had to be your own shop. And I think that this is one of the more recent changes. You can now also essentially check out on Amazon. And so it's essentially driving additional traffic to your Amazon store. Or if you go D2C and you do your Shopify, then essentially it's just increasing. It's just another way to drive traffic to your own store. So I think that Google Shopping is definitely something to look into. And I would agree that it's probably more promising than some of the other names.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that I think is interesting, and, you know, I live in Missoula, Montana. It's a relatively small town. It's not a big metropolitan area, but I applaud some of the local brick and mortar retailers who moved quickly to create, they didn't have online shopping. They created online shopping, and they're pulling a page from big box store. So they've implemented basically click and collect. So a lot of the retail stores here, they're deemed non-essential, so their brick and mortar have to close, but they pivoted really fast. And so I can buy online and then I can drive up and pick it up. And so one of the things that I thought about with that is if I have my own fulfillment and you're going direct to consumer and you're going merchant fulfilled and you have your website, I would immediately put on my own direct to consumer that, you know, if you know, for wherever your warehouse is located. So for example, say you're located in Chicago. There's no reason why you couldn't do curbside pickup through your FC or your warehouse, because no one's coming into your store. They're going to buy it online. You know, you can put the technology there to hey, text me or whatever when you're on your way, and then you can come pick it up. So if I have my own warehouse, I would be looking at some sort of curbside, you know, click and collect pickup through my direct to consumer for my local shoppers.
Yeah, that is a great idea. I mean, it's essentially a new, yet again, a new channel to a certain degree, and it's gaining a lot of popularity these days for obvious reasons. So definitely something that we've seen here in Germany as well, right? Which was it was very uncommon before, and suddenly, well, everyone's kind of doing it, right? So cool, Peter. A ton of insights. Thank you very much for sharing all of this. There are a couple of questions that were coming for the audience. So Jim was asking, what is sponsored brands video search?
Oh, yeah. So it's a beta that rolled out, or a program that rolled out. I'm not sure if it's still in beta or not, but I think it's available. It rolled out a few months ago. And basically, you know, as you're searching on your mobile device and also on your desktop now, in the search results, instead of the detail page product coming up, what will come up as you scroll through will literally be a video. And as the video loads into the screen, as soon as a certain percentage of the video is on the screen, it immediately starts to play. And it can be really captivating. It can definitely be one of those thumb-stopping content kinds of things, because as a consumer, you know, you're used to looking at all of these detail pages, you know, here's the white image and the title and the stars. And then all of a sudden here comes this beautiful video. It's really pretty cool. It's very similar to, you know, the videos that you're seeing pop up like when you're scrolling through Instagram. The recommendation is, you know, you can have music, you can have audio, but to put subtitles on it, because, you know, that way, as it starts to play, you can start reading it instead of having to listen to it if you don't have the volume on. That's something that I think is really dynamic and something that if you're a brand, that every brand should be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically now at the beginning, because there's so few of those available, it's going to be a huge attention grabber, and its performance is going to be outstanding. I mean, so far also what we've seen is that it's very strong. So now the drawback obviously is you need to have a video, right? Which is not that easy to produce. So that's essentially the thing.
But if you do have if you have content on your A+ detail page, pull that, make a quick 30-second video, reuse that. Don't reinvent the wheel. The key though is to make sure that it's product specific. Don't just take, if you have A+ video that's about your company, that's fantastic, but that's not necessarily going to drive the engagement that you're looking for. Make sure that it's well made and product specific.
So I don't know. I think it's available. It's rolled out. It's publicly available, and I think it's available globally as well. I don't know exactly. Also, Sarah was asking, but I think it's available globally. I mean, you can just go and check it out in the console and see if it's there.
Check it out. It's keyword targeted. It's cost per click, and it links directly to the detail page.
Yeah. What else? Janine was asking, what are your thoughts on vendor central direct fulfillment?
It's a good question. One that I don't know if I can really, that's very vague. I'm not sure I can answer. What are my thoughts on it? I mean, I think that if you have a vendor central account and direct fulfillment, typically that shouldn't be impacted by this because Amazon's not actually, taking possession of the inventory. If you do have direct fulfillment and you're seeing impacts on that, I'm not really sure I can answer that. Sorry. But I, don't know if I can get into the details on that. Without having more details.
I think it's probably a good solution also to reduce dependency, right? From the Amazon operations. Obviously, you need to be able to fulfill yourself, right? So that's a question whether you can do it or not, right? But if you can, I mean, it's kind of I look at it as somewhat like FBM, right, to a certain degree. And so. But
for sure. And I mean, I don't know the program. I don't know if it's a self-service through Vendor Central. I thought it was, invite only, one of those things. And I think that's one of the challenges with Vendor Central is that it tends to be less, there tends to be less communication about how you can get into those programs unless you're a really big vendor and you have like the vendor manager relationship.
So what else we have? A YouTube question. Will Amazon modify its logistics or delivery strategy in order to avoid these backlogs issues again?
Yeah, I think the answer has to be yes. I think that they are constantly evolving. And I read an article in the New York Times this morning that Jeff Bezos is now back in the day-to-day of managing Amazon and getting, daily updates on particular things and making changes, which from some people's perspectives, that's a good thing. So I think that they're gonna continue to monitor it. I think that as this continues to unfold, unfortunately, and if it does get worse again, if there are spikes, if there are these second, third waves, those are going to get impacted because people are going to get sick. Family members are going to have to stay home to take care of their kids if schools are canceled or childcare. So I do think that they continue to make modify their logistics and delivery. Some of the things, back in the day, Amazon had an advertising option that if the product wasn't available on Amazon, you could advertise it to your website. And it was actually, I can't remember the name of it. I wanted to reach out to my buddy at Amazon, Matt.
Product listing ads also. Is that possible? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it was, but back in the days.
And it's tough because Amazon doesn't want to drive traffic away from their product listings. But Amazon's so customer obsessed that can they provide a better customer experience if it's in stock on the brand's website? And it might be something that Amazon looks at in a way to change some of those things. They did cancel their or put on hold their delivery service business that they were rolling out. So I definitely think that there's going to be changes in that. They've already gone to changing, from 1 day and to 2 day to longer. So that they're going to have to continue to monitor and evolve.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that going through all of this. And while it feels long to a certain degree, realistically, it's been 4, 5, 6 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So going through all of this, hiring 100,000 people and making sure that you can onboard 100,000 people in 4, 5, 6 weeks or so, I think they already made a ton of learnings. And if the operations are running afterwards on that level, the system will improve dramatically already. So assuming that you will not have an even bigger issue than COVID, and I think of all the issues you can have, it's a pretty massive issue. Then I think that Amazon will be in a very good stage for the future, right? At least for the short and midterm, right? But and then let's see, we have time for maybe one last question. Dennis was asking, we're selling salsa and our current sales are up 185% from January. That's great.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Congrats. We're thinking that since people are discovering how easy it is to get household staples online, that our sales uptake will continue, maybe not by 185%, but we're thinking that sales will still be up from pre-pandemic months. What are your thoughts? I mean, we kind of talked about this, right? But yeah.
Yeah, but I totally agree. I think for grocery in those essential items, I think you're going to see a number of people who are just not comfortable going out and shopping. So I think that is a good thing for e-commerce. It's a bad thing for brick and mortar and grocery like that. But I do think it's probably pretty safe to say that those numbers continue. Keep a close eye on it though as things start to roll out, because you'll start to see a decrease in it, and you'll be able to monitor your inventory and adjust accordingly. But I do think you're going to see those people that are like, hey, this is actually really easy to just click a couple buttons and it shows up on my door a couple of days later. So I think that, congrats on the sales. I do anticipate in grocery that it's going to continue.
Awesome. Peter, great session. Thank you very much. Just in time.
You're welcome.
Your kids coming in.
Just in time. Yeah. My daughter Penelope, she's coming in. Like, what do you got there? I'm on the phone, honey. Give me a couple minutes.
That is perfect timing. So Peter, thank you very much for your time, for sharing all of this, a ton of insights. And I hope this was helpful for you guys. And then, tune in again for next week. We also have a big launch coming up on a product side. So if you're interested in finding out more on this, go to sellics.com/new-release, and you can sign up there. And then, see you around next week. See you, Peter.
That's great. Thanks,
bye-bye.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.